Welcome and introduction, sir. So, on behalf of Indian Institute of Packaging Alumni Association, office bearers, Swati Raut, President, your batchmate, fortunately, then Hari Narayan, General Secretary, Treasurer Jay Prakash, Ajay, and myself, we welcome you. It's a pleasure that packaging veteran and also in the marketing packaging space. So, students were very eager to hear from some person a packaging professional who has worked in different functions. Usually we hear from the people from packaging development or procurement, but marketing is a place. And when it comes a professional who has spent like 3+ decades in the packaging marketing space, and you are like leading the PSPD function of ITC, it really makes sense. So we hear EPR and CA terminologies, and your point of view on that. So I would though I've introduced you a brief in brief, I would like to pass on to you to start with the formal introduction process so that the students know about you and they can connect with you.
Thanks for having me here. It's a pleasure to interact with the alumni and with the students. Okay, I've got a mixed kind of an experience across the last 3 decades. I've been in business in screen printing and all that. And then, but right from the beginning, I've been in sales and marketing. I think I'm probably a very few amongst the entire 900 or 1000 odd packaging professionals today who's focused completely on sales and marketing. And I've been selling different types of packaging material. Started off with BOPP-based films, then went on to extrusion coated films, and then moved on to a specialty corrugated box. And then for the last 2 decades, I've been selling paper boards for the paper boards and specialty papers division of ITC, which is what I represent. And for the last 10 years, I have been championing almost all the green initiatives of ITC, which kind of exposed me to these 2 terms, which is extended producer responsibility and circular economy, which is what I'm going to talk to you about today. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to both these terms. How is it being used? Why did it become necessary? What does the implementation say in the European Union, and what is the level of implementation in India, and so on. What I would like all the attendees to do is you don't have to note down anything from the slide, because I'm going to share this entire presentation with the Alumni Association and they can send it across to you. It's better to note down some of the doubts or questions that you have, which I would be happy to answer at the end of the presentation. So what I will now do is let me begin. And it's better to listen to what I'm saying than to note down the slide content, because anyway, you're going to get the slides. So this is what I'm going to talk to you about. What is the EPR and circular economy? And this is my content. We will cover what are these 2 terms, what do they mean? Why were they considered to be required? What is the need for an EPR and circular economy? What are the regulations covering both these terms? And what happens at the end of the cycle? And we are going to give some examples, both from our industry and an alternative industry on the packaging side, right? Okay. Actually, is this visible now? I'm in the what is EPR slide.
Yes,
it is visible.
Okay, right. Thanks. So let me proceed then. So, see, this is a policy approach. What it does is it says that the brand is responsible for the entire life cycle of the package. And at every stage of a package's life cycle, it has got an environmental impact, right? Especially after the package has been dispensed with and discarded, it assigns the responsibility based on the type of material and says that the brand and the people who are involved in placing the brand for consumption, they are responsible for the entire impact and they have to mitigate this impact. That's what we're going to talk about today. Similarly, what is a circular economy? 10-15 years ago, all of us were operating in a linear economy, straight line approach. You take a raw material, you convert that raw material to a packaging material or a product, it goes through its intended use, then it gets discarded, and then people forget about it, right? So there was raw material, conversion, consumption, and waste, right? So people actually didn't bother as to what was happening to these packages which you and I were throwing out, right? A circular economy actually takes care of the entire chain, makes this linear into a circle and says, from raw material at every stage, we will see how sustainable the entire process can be converted into and what can be done with the waste packaging material. So there are two types. One is a pre-consumer waste, which means during the process of manufacturing a packaging material. Let's say there is a film. You take that film, you laminate it with one more film, you print it, convert it into a pouch, right? During the process of conversion, there is some wastage. That is the pre-consumer waste. And once you take the pouch, let's say it's a Lay's chip or a Bingo's chips pack. You buy the pack, take it home, you consume the chips, and then you throw away the pack. When that is collected, that is called post-consumer waste. So both have to be kept in mind, and we'll have to ensure that how these can be, either an alternative use has to be found, or it has to be recycled, or it has to be reused. So that's what the circular economy forces the brand to do. Let's see how this is done. The first one, it starts with the design, new solutions to optimize resources and prolong the life of the product. The second one is the sourcing, to innovate the increased opportunity to reuse the material and to either reduce virgin material, or if you're going to use virgin material, it has to be from a sustainable source. Then it moves on into production, using improved technology to increase the efficiency of the process. Then goes into distribution, which means there is a freight involved, there is a weight that is being transported, there is an emission which is involved. You try to work to reduce the wastage along the supply chain. Consumption and use, which is where we play a big role, and then comes recycling. So this is in a simple infographic as to what the circular economy is all about, right? Right now, if you do not understand this, do not worry. I'm going to show you some examples later with which your clarity will improve on what is a circular economy. Now let's look at why do we need EPR, right? This is actually slightly dated. This is from 2016. India generates almost 62 million tons of waste every year, of which 60% is collected. So 40%, close to 24 to 25 million tons of waste goes uncollected. Even out of the waste which is collected, only around 30% gets processed, and the balance 70% gets dumped into a landfill. So this is all types of waste, in which if you see, the maximum would be packaging waste, right? And the landfills that we have so far built, they rank third globally in terms of greenhouse gas emissions. In simple terms, what are greenhouse gas emissions? These are the ones which are equated to a carbon dioxide equivalent emission, which go and affect the ozone layer, and then it leads to a global warming. So every one of these GHGs is read as a global warming potential with the unit of so many tons of equivalent of carbon dioxide. That is, if this gas is emitted, it's equivalent to so many tons of carbon dioxide being emitted, and therefore its global warming potential is arrived at. Okay. Now, waste generation in the country is also having an annual average growth rate of 4%. This increases the minute your GDP increases and our consumption goes up, waste generation also goes up. So going by this, if you look at the table at the bottom, you will find that these are the top cities. What is the land area that's available in these cities, the number of landfills, and the area of those landfills. So as our waste increases, we will need more and more area for landfill, which is the worst possible usage for land, which is why we need somebody to address this waste and see how can we prevent it from going into a landfill. And to address this is what the extended producer responsibility is all about, right? Let's look at the current waste management practices. Southeast Asia, if you look at it, composition of waste, food and green is almost 57%, and the rest is all made up of predominantly packaging material. And if you look at the waste disposal, 75% is in an open dump, and hardly 21% is either recycled or composted, right? So let's look at EPR, which is being seen as a tool to drive the transition from a linear economy to a circular economy. How are we doing it? We are shifting the responsibility. In very simple terms, governments world over turned around and started asking brands like us that you are generating the packaging material, your packaging material is being thrown out as waste. Why should the government spend money in collecting it and recycling it? What is the brand's role in ensuring that this waste does not become an environmental concern? So that is how the whole dialogue started. And as usual in these areas, the European Union becomes the forerunner. So I'm going to talk to you slightly about what the EU has done in the last decade. And then we are also going to look at what India has done as far as EPR and CE is concerned. So let's look at some of the regulations, right? Now, I want you to pay attention to the right side of the screen, which is what we describe as a waste hierarchy, right? The number one, the topmost being the preferred way of managing waste, and the bottommost being the least preferred way of managing waste. So the first one that they say is prevention. If you can prevent your packaging material from even getting into the waste stream, that's the most preferred one. The second is, of course, minimization, and then reuse, recycling, other recovery, including energy recovery, then finally landfill, controlled deposit, and then uncontrolled deposit. Whatever you see in the red portion, which is landfill, controlled deposit, and uncontrolled deposit, is the least preferred method. And for a brand, it is the most expensive option, right? So let's look at, what the EU has done. In 2014, the European Union had a municipal waste recycling percentage of close to 44%. And these are the ambitious targets that they have set for themselves, saying by 2025, they'll reach 55, and by 2035, they will reach 65% of municipal waste will be segregated, collected, and recycled. That's the recycling target for municipal waste. Let's look at segregation at source, which is the most important thing. And India started looking at solid waste management. And the first set of rules for solid waste management came only 4 years ago, which is in 2016, where they started speaking about segregation at source, recovery, reuse, and recycle. In simple terms, if you want to understand what is segregation at source, is at your own home, right? If there is a waste paper basket, when we were studying, when we were children, there was only one basket. All waste went into that basket, whether it was wet, dry, or hazardous or not, everything went into it. Kitchen waste, food waste, packaging waste, cells or batteries that we throw out, cleaning waste, everything went into the same bin, right? Today, in most of the metros, the municipality says that they will not pick up waste if everything is mixed. So the basic segregation begins at our end, so the responsibility begins with us. So we have started, if you take Hyderabad where I live, it's compulsory to segregate dry and wet waste at least. So the municipal waste collector who comes on a daily basis to the door, he picks up only the wet waste, and the dry waste is collected every Thursday. And the minute these two are mixed, the waste is not picked up from your house, right? So that's the first thing that we'll have to understand as to what do we mean by segregation at source. You would have found that there are different colored bins in most of the places that you go to. And this is the first step in segregating the waste. Next is a collect bag scheme for packaging waste. They wanted to come up with a scheme. And the third was the user fees for collection. If you look at any poly bag today, poly bag or any kind of a plastic container, if you read the entire label, somewhere you will find the name and address of the person who has manufactured that packaging material. And it will also say what is the waste collection back. When this packaging is given back, how much can you expect to be paid for it? Somewhere, let's say, I think today in Maharashtra, it says 15 rupees a kg. So if you can collect all that plastic waste, build it up to a kg, the municipal system in the chain, you will get back 15 rupees per kilo. So this is a way of an economic incentive that the government is attempting to give so that people would start working on making the packaging itself more and more recyclable, right? So that's the first thing that they did as far as the Solid Waste Management Rule 2016 was concerned. Then came 2000, the Gutka minimum thickness increased to 50 micron. First it was 40 micron for, the poly bag, and then it was increased to 50 micron. Today, any poly bag across all the states in the country, which is less than 50 micron, is definitely banned. Similarly, sachets for Gutka, pan masala, and tobacco are also banned, but composters are exempted from the thickness rule. Shopkeepers and street vendors have also been brought into the ambit by at least registering them today. So today we know who are the generators of this waste from small to big. When I say big, Indian Railways is one of the largest waste generators, right? So 2018, what they did was it also included recyclable and non-recyclable. The minute the biggest culprit in this entire waste management was the multi-layer packaging, which probably packaging people like us, or the 1,000 of our fraternity, we went ahead and designed. Now, what we did was when we started designing laminates, especially, we started building in various barrier properties. Most of you would have read about oxygen transmission rates and water vapor transmission rates. And not every plastic can have both the features, right? So we started making combination plastics. So if you had LDPE, it used to give you a good water vapor barrier, but it was a poor oxygen barrier. Then we started adding nylon to it. And then you needed a tie layer. And then in between, we started making some copolymers along with it. Then we said that the best barrier would be a aluminum foil. And then from aluminum foil, we went on into metallized polyester, which is aluminum foil laminated onto polyester through different means. So all these things, what happened was we improved the barrier and we ensured that the product inside was kept good and had a long shelf life, right? So the more we were working, the entire focus was on ensuring that the packaging material did its primary function of protecting the product inside. The same thing, when it was dispensed and then thrown into the atmosphere, all the parameters which we designed for packaging, for protecting the product, became the culprit as far as the environment was concerned. So therefore, we had to take a relook. So the plastic waste management rule talks about multi-layer plastic or multi-layer packaging. And this multi-layer packaging is not even collected because we made it thinner and thinner, right? So that to reduce the emissions due to freight and to also make handling and storage easy, the packaging material also started becoming thinner, right? As we started doing this, it became even more difficult for people to collect. So if you are a waste collector, right, and you are told that if you collect, say, glass bottle, you will be paid X rupees per kg. And if you collect, say, cartons and newspapers, you will be paid, say, 7 rupees a kg. The same quantity for him to collect a plastic material, he would have to spend the entire day to collect just a few kgs, and nobody was paying him anything for it. Whereas there were people ready to pay him for glass bottles and paper-based products or even metal-based products. So the waste collectors stopped collecting multi-layer plastics, right? And slowly these started accumulating in the atmosphere, and they also started clogging our drains, leading to heavy flooding in the cities, right? So this was brought into the ambit of the plastic waste management rule, and they said it should either be collected, there should be a price that the system will pay for this waste, and then put to alternate use. If there is no alternate use, you should try and recycle it. Recycling becomes difficult because we have married 2 or 3 different plastic properties. If nothing is possible, finally these could be burnt in cement kilns. In between, people have also tried to put this as the underlayer during road construction too. So we are trying to find alternative methods, even for the packaging material and also for the multi-layer plastic waste which gets generated. So let's look at the plastic facts. As far as India is concerned, 60% is what is getting recycled. Waste generated is 9 million tons a year, but 40% goes without any kind of recycling, which is why the plastic waste management rules became extremely important and critical to manage this collection and waste. Although this has been done so far, the issue that we are facing is that the implementation is still quite poor, right? So let's see what the European Union has done with a similar problem which they were also facing probably a decade ago, right? Let's look at the green dot. So this is a registered symbol that signifies that the producer has made a financial contribution towards the recovery and recycling of packaging. So green dot is a system which will segregate, recover and recycle both domestic and commercial waste and use the existing municipal waste collection systems. And this, the industry has to fund the green dot, right? Industry funded system that collects packaging material. This green dot logo indicates to the consumer that the brand has taken up the responsibility of managing its packaging waste and has contributed towards the collection and recycling system. So you can print that green dot, which is the logo that I'm showing here, onto the package. So how does this work? So let's take the case of, say, Ireland Repack. This is the participation fee and license that they have to pay, and then the material specific fee for each participating material placed on the market by brand holders or importers. Now, please focus on the table which is given at the bottom, and you will see what are the different packaging materials and what is the cost in euro per ton that the brand has to pay. So not only have you paid for buying the raw material and processing it and converting it into a pouch or a bottle or a carton or a bag, when it gets discarded, it's going to be calculated on so many euros per ton. And if you produce so many tons, they'll know this is the tonnage which is going to go into wastage. And this is the cost that has to be paid for collection and recycling, right? And you would find plastics is almost more than 3.5 times that of, say, paper, and it's almost 9 times that of glass, right? Wood, you can actually ignore wood because there's hardly anybody who's using wood today. And composite A, which is paper and plastic, composite B, which is steel or aluminum, is also again very, very expensive to collect and recycle. This is the cost that you'll have to pay if it's going to be in Ireland. Okay. Similar one when converted into INR per ton for the same. Now, why am I showing this to you? Because today, many of these global brands, are using India as their design source. Ajay, is there a disturbance? Can I proceed?
Yeah, proceed, sir. Sorry for the disturbance.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Yeah. Okay. So most of us here, most of you, when you join large multinationals in their packaging development or procurement teams, would be asked to design packaging not for use only in India, but also for use globally in any one of the European Union countries. And you should be aware of what the green dot is. And when you're designing the packaging, what kind of material to be used in it also has to be taken into account, because this is the cost that the brand has to bear if they're going to place this for sale in the European Union, right? And everybody in the chain has a fee to be paid. From manufacturer to converter to distributor, wholesaler to retailer, there is a participation fee which they'll have to pay, which is what this slide is all about. Let's look at circular economy, and then I will bring the link between the two. Let's look at glass as a circular economy. I don't know what focus is now being given in the 2-year course for glass, but glass is kind of making a reincarnation, is what we should say, right? Simply because somewhere between 70 to 90% of any new glass bottle that is made from old broken glass, which we call as cullet, right? So there's a glass factory. From there, where the glass is made, it goes to a consumer. The bottle is collected. It goes to a cullet treatment plant. It either looks at some other uses, which is not even there today. It goes back to a glass factory. So glass is a perfect example of a circular economy participant, right? So that's why I've shown you glass as a simple illustration of how it contributes to the CE, right? So let's look at this slide where the European Union glass packaging industry, which is looking at making the EU circular economy real, right? This is in 7 steps. You will find that 87% of Europeans over the last decade have started preferring glass, right? Because it indirectly contributes to a positive trade balance of 21 billion per year, can be recycled, can be refilled, can be reused, and I'm told close 35 to 40 times a bottle can be repeatedly washed and reused before it breaks. Even after it breaks, it enters as cullet and gets converted into a new glass bottle again, which is why they say glass is probably one of the best material. So let me go back to 2 or 3 slides. If you look at this slide, you will find glass is the lowest cost in euro per ton. It's only 9 euros per ton, simply because it lends itself to the best form of recycling and reuse, right? Now let's look at this slide again. Production has increased by almost 40% of glass in the last 25 years. Believe me, 10 to 15 years ago, glass was almost written off. Once the PET bottle came, once the Standy Pack came, and once the other plastic materials came into being, people almost wrote off glass. Even if you ask me, I would say glass bottle was probably being used only for soft drinks and to some extent for packaging of eye drops or some intravenous injections, right? This was the only place where glass was being used because it was the most inert packaging material known to man at that time, right? But it was heavy and it also could be broken and it could lead to some injuries. Therefore, it slowly started getting replaced, and I would say it's now making its reincarnation through this circular economy stipulation, right? Let's look at paper, right? My favorite topic, of course. So is paper circular, right? Other than the packaging fraternity, wherever I go and make a presentation, the first question I ask is, do you think paper comes from forests, right? 15 years ago, almost 75 to 90% of the audience used to raise their hand and say, yes, paper comes from destroying forests. I'm glad that now only hardly 2% think that it comes from destroying forests. No paper company in India, why India, even in the world, there is not a single paper company worth its salt which can touch even a tree from the forest, and they do not do it because it is not viable, right? Almost all of us depend on farmers from plantations where there are certain species which are sustainably grown. So it becomes like any other crop, right? Only thing is that this crop, the first time that you plant, it needs a 4-year cycle. Subsequently, every year it is harvested, and that is how we get the pulpwood for converting it into paper or paperboard. So that's the first circle which I'm talking about here, which is sustainable plantations, from where the wood comes into the paper mills, gets converted into paper or paperboard for making for writing and printing applications or for converting into cartons or packaging applications, gets used, thrown out, and gets collected back, right? So your Radiwala will already, he is already paying you somewhere around 6 to 7 rupees a kg to collect all your paper and cardboard waste, because there is somebody downstream who's willing to pay him 9 to 10 rupees to take it and then collect them together, send them to a paper mill for it to be converted and made into recycled paper or recycled paperboard, right? So that's why we say that paper is eminently circular, right? Let's go to the next slide. How we do it is, there is a farm forestry or a social forestry program. Saplings, high-yielding saplings have been identified, and these have also been identified for different types of soil types. So the farmer sends the soil sample, it gets tested at the laboratory, and a suitable sapling is sent to him, and then he can start growing and regrowing these plantations, which is then converted into pulpwood from where the product is made, right? So these are the various processes and the regulations which are there, and these plantations are also certified to the Forest Stewardship Council, right? You can go and Google FSC. It's an entire system globally well known for certifying that the product which is packed in a paper-based material, the pulp for that paper has come from a certified plantation. Abroad, companies are allowed to own full forests, so therefore it comes under the Forest Stewardship Council. Here in India, it is not allowed, so we work with farmers who then grow the pulpwood and sell it to us, right? The certification is such that the entire chain of custody can be tracked. So from a lot number of a package, we can tell you who the converter who converted the carton, and from there we can take it down to the farm plot, the GPS coordinates of the farm plot from which the pulpwood came, which was then converted, which is a prerequisite for any packaging from India. If it's going to be exported to the European Union, you will come across something called the European Union Timber Regulation, where you'll have to prove that you have the entire genealogy of this product and from what species it came and from which geographic area did the species come, and the pulp emanated for the packaging that you're going to place for your product in the European Union. It's there now for applicable in the US also. So it's practically to almost any country that you want to export. Probably not for, say, the Africas and all that, but they are also learning and they are also setting up their own checking and due diligence mechanisms, as we call these things, right? Now, what happened in India, right? Although I told you that the implementation for EPR or for CE is not very strict right now, the Confederation of Indian Industry has come up with something called the CII Green Code, which looks at an entire process and looks at these 10 parameters and rates a company under either certified bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And that tells you whether the product that you are buying, is it environmentally friendly, and does it contribute itself to automatically to a circular economy and therefore to a lesser impact on the brand for conforming to extended producer responsibility stipulations, right? Let's look at adding functionality to paper. There are barrier coatings. The simple paper cup which you use today is actually paper plus low density polyethylene. So when you drink a cup of tea or coffee, and then when you discard this cup, if it has to be collected, it has to be cleaned and collected, and it needs special recycling mechanisms to separate the LDPE layer, separate the fiber, send both for recycling into government authorized recyclers, which could be a paper mill, it could also be a plastic recycler. Today, there are almost 4,380 registered authorized manufacturers for recyclers for just plastic material alone, right? So there is a change happening. The plastic waste management rules and the banning of the plastic covers has brought in a lot of awareness, right? Implementation on the ground might be a bit tardy, but definitely there is a lot of awareness for everybody in the chain. What is happening to their packaging material? People have started asking us questions on how is it affecting the environment, right? So we design it in these manners, either with a degradable source, renewable resource, and a degradable waste is the most preferred one, right? So let's look at a couple of our samples. So instead of LDPE, we've now brought about something called a bio-based barrier, which is either made out of polylactic acid, is the most common bio-based barrier, which comes from cornstarch. Or today there is something called PBS, which is polybutene sulfate, which is again used for these barriers for paper or paper board to convert them into ice cream cups or tubs, right? And then the next one is to look at what happens when we talk about composting and biodegradation, right? Because I told you at the beginning of this presentation that nothing goes away. When you throw away something, it doesn't go away. It stays in the atmosphere. It stays in the planet and it causes an impact. Therefore, we came up with compostable packaging material, right? There are plastics also to some extent which are compostable. There are other materials which is the design of the structure itself is built in such a way that it can compost, and there are multiple stages of composting. So what happens at the end of the composting cycle? It becomes humus and just converted into water, carbon dioxide, and a compost material or humus, which can be used to enrich your soil, and you can grow back whatever kind of plants you want on such enriched soil. So that's the stage in which this composting takes place. Let's look at some of the certifications which are required, which is now essential in India also. You will have to get the products tested at CIPET for biodegradability based on either ISO 17088 and also ASTM 6868. The test itself takes 6 months to perform because they'll have to see if the material gets completely biodegraded. Once it biodegrades, they take the product which comes out of the biodegradation, which actually looks like a soil. They test the soil for heavy metals. There should be no heavy metals present. And then they put rice and tomato seeds into the soil, and then they wait for germination. Only after all these 3 stages are passed does CIPET give you a biodegradability certificate, right? So people are asking for this biodegradability certificate for any packaging material. And if that has to be done, it has to conform to these regulations. And the supplier has to give you a test certificate for this and also register himself with the Central Pollution Control Board, right? So let's look at, I spoke to you about bio-based, which is PLA or PBS based. Today there are water-based emulsion coatings available. These are some of the brands today. which are also, barrier boards. Some of the frozen food manufacturers, some certain large brands which make frozen foods, they have now shifted from paperboard with LDPE. They have transferred to paperboard with water-based emulsion coating, where the carton itself gets filled with the product. It can go into a cold chain, and once you buy it, you can dispense from it and throw the carton. And once you throw this carton, it can enter into the conventional recycling mechanism. You don't need any special kind of recycling, which means along with other cartons and newspapers and books and notebooks that you throw out, these also can be collected and recycled, and you can make recycled paper or paperboard out of it. I told you that glass can be reused almost 40 times, and almost many number of times it can be recycled. Paper or paperboard can be recycled somewhere between 4 to 6 times, which means the virgin fiber goes through its entire usage, becomes post-consumer waste. After that, it can be reused another 3 to 5 times, right? So this fiber can be repeatedly converted back into paper or paperboard and then taken for its end use. So let's look at the certification of recyclability. So there is the Central Pulp and Paper Research Institute, which gives a repulpability certificate and also does a recyclability testing. So any packaging material which you buy, people are going to, today they have started asking us for these certificates, right? So let's look at what happens on the end of cycle and what are the challenges of waste management. The biggest challenge for waste management are, I would say, the so-called educated metro crowd, people like you and me, who have not yet started segregating waste at its source, right? The minute you mix, I told you glass and paper or paperboard or even metal is very, very eminently recyclable. Even rigid plastic, all your plastic cans, rigid plastics is also recyclable. All these things are recyclable only if they have been segregated at source and collected back. So if you have got a dump which has got kitchen waste, kitchen peels, food waste, sambar and dal mixed together and thrown into the waste, even though those materials are recyclable, the waste collector is not going to pick it out of that and give it for recycling because it's just not worthy to be recycled, right? So the first thing we'll have to do is segregate wet and dry waste, and within the dry waste, do a further segregation between plastic, paper, paperboard, metal, and glass, right? Which then fetches you a value for the waste actually. So let's look at ITC's approach to waste management. This is what we have done, and you will find this being the well-being out of waste is a program which has been done as propagation of just creating awareness. We had a very interesting experience here. We tried going and telling people, adults, we tried going and talking to corporates. We did not have much success in this. From 2007 to 2010 or 11, we didn't have much success. Then we started going and talking to schools and colleges. And these children went back and started educating their parents. They started practicing what is the source segregation. And that's how the system slowly started becoming efficient, both in the collection system and then the sorting and the recycling also became a process. And this is the coverage which we have today. And this 12,000 metric tons of MLP is what we have collected. And those green areas which you see is the states in which we collect them. Now, why can't we take this across India? Now, that's a standard question that we face. We can do it, but then waste does not travel very well. So there is a freight cost to it and there is an emission cost to waste. Now, we have a unit which can take recycled fiber and convert it back into paperboard, which is there in Tamil Nadu. So these are the states in which we can operate, where we can collect it and send it back to that unit. Across the country, when more and more recycled waste manufacturers or paper manufacturers can start taking waste, then segregated waste will start being used. Today, rigid plastics, plastics which has more than 70% of a single monomer, glass, metal, paper, all of this is abundantly collected and recycled, but we still have a very long way to go, as I showed you in the early slides, right? So let's look at, therefore, people have started asking, is your packaging sustainable? So this is a term which is bandied about very often, and therefore I thought it is only prudent that from here we should talk about what is sustainable packaging. right? Tomorrow you might be working in a place, an FMCG company, where they might come and say, hey, look, we are going to launch a new biscuit. This is a cream biscuit. It's got so much of sugar. It's got so much of fat content. And I want a 6 to 9 month shelf life. Please design what should be the packaging material. Previously, we were all taught to look at shelf life. We were all taught to look at only protecting the product. Now, all of us start looking at first thing as design for the environment has become a mantra, right? So at every stage, we see what is the impact. And that is what sustainable packaging is all about. That it's beneficial, safe, and healthy for individuals and communities throughout its life cycle, right? Meets the market criteria. It can be effectively recovered and utilized in a biological or industrially closed loop cycles, right? And it's made from material which is healthy throughout their life cycle. So that's the key thing as to what is sustainable packaging. There are abundant definitions for this. I've taken one from Packaging Digest. You can choose any one of them. Basically, all of them would talk to you about a source which is, a sustainable source, processes which are environment friendly, and collection and recycling, which is also environment friendly, while continuing to deliver on all the things which you have learned probably in your first or second semester on what is the role of packaging, right? Let's look at what is a checklist for a sustainable packaging design. This is what I've been speaking to you about. This is how the design has to be done. If you can tick all these boxes, then you can select a material or a combination of materials, choose the product shape, and then say what the biscuit packet should all be about. Okay, this would give you a 360-degree holistic view of designing for the environment while still delivering on the basic requirements of a package, right? Now, that's the last slide of my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope this has been useful to you. And let me take a sip of water, after which I'm going to be ready to take questions, right? So Akshay, Ajay, this is the last slide. You can
A very good evening, sir. I'm Niharika from Hyderabad, Thailand. Firstly, I would like to thank you for such an amazing session on behalf of the whole 34th Batch and Alumni Association. It was very informative. Now moving to the questionnaire. The first question for you, it's from Nidhi. Customer education is very important to implement circular economy. So what should be the brand's responsibility towards it?
Okay, if you look at most of the brands' websites, right? That's the first place where they start talking about. You would find a separate tab, right, which is about on sustainability, right? So when you click on that tab, you would find most of them wanting to declare what they are going to do with their product and packaging to move towards circular economy. Where are they today, and what are the targets that you have set? Let's take a classic example. If you look at the Hindustan Unilever Limited side, there is something called a Global Sustainability Living Plan, right? Where they say that by 2025, 75% of all their packaging will have either a recycled content or it will be made from a sustainable raw material source, right? So awareness creation at that level is where it has to start, because usually you will find the divisional chief executives or the CEOs making that commitment. The minute that commitment is made, down the line, everybody starts talking about it. So the marketing guy actually starts using it as a sales and marketing tool. So the minute you start, propagating this across the social media, across websites, and also you start printing it on your package, that's the best way of creating awareness. So every time the brand talks about not only about itself, the brand also starts talking about the packaging. So that's the best way of, you can go about creating this awareness.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. That answered our question. And the next question is from Rajneesh. What are the EPR guidelines which are covering about thickness of stretch wrap since it is less than 51 microns?
Okay. If you look at the plastic waste management rule, as of now, it is for the consumer packaging, right? The stretch wrap is for the industrial packaging. There also, most of the companies, to be on the safe side, have gone beyond this 50 micron stipulation, and all of them try to identify a government authorized recycler of packaging who comes every month and collects all this stretcher of packaging waste and gets it recycled, right? It's the kind of packaging which you and I take home which does not enter the segregation of the recycling stream that easily. Industrial packaging at the factory site is usually collected, stored, and sent for recycling. And there also, people have started following this thickness stipulation.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
And
next question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The next
Niharika,
question.
you don't have to thank me for every answer. Don't worry. Just go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead with the next question.
Yeah, the next question is from Supriya. How can the concept of circular economy contribute in the case of multi-layer packages, especially in Southeast Asian countries where MLPs have a huge market, but the only way of disposal is either landfill or incineration?
That's a industry-wide issue that is being faced today. It is difficult. There are certain plants, pyrolysis is one method which has been abundantly written about. In some cases, there are a few plants which, you can take it back to the original polymer, almost back to making some oil, which can be used as a fuel oil or as a furnace oil, but it's not taken off very well in India. So the problem of multi-layer packaging waste is a big problem that is facing everybody. So most of the packaging designers are going back to the design table, and they're trying to see whether they can reduce the number of layers or they can reduce the complexity, right? So today, let us say if you've got linear low density polyethylene, metallized polyester, reverse printed BOPP, and then a tie layer in between, they're trying to see can at least one of them can be eliminated, right? And try to make a monomer, a greater one, let's say if the package is made entirely of LDPE or LLDPE combination. If you take a milk film, for example, your half liter, 1 liter packet is a co-extruded film, LD, LLD co-extrusion, which is why people would say, you wash the milk packet and keep it, somebody would come and pick it from your doorstep. So if somebody is willing to pay money at your doorstep for your packaging material, which means you've already started contributing to a circular economy. Now, MLP, we did an interesting experiment. Left as such, MLP was getting hardly 3 to 4 rupees a kg, and the guy had to spend almost a day to collect a few kgs. So he was not picking it up. Therefore, in Pune, we did an experiment where we said, let us look at the entire chain of waste collectors, including the collector, the segregator, and then the distributor, and then the wholesaler, and see what amount of money would incentivize them to collect multi-layer packaging. The 3 to 4 rupees per kg turned out to be almost 20 rupees a kg. The 16 rupees will be, put by the brand on the product, which means you and I will have to pay for it, right? Which today, nobody is willing to do it. So a lot of work is now going on. So if you join a company where you're going to be looking at multi-layer packaging, the first thing you'll be asked to do is to start studying as to how you can make it more collectible and recyclable. So the question does not have a direct answer. The work is on.
Yeah.
Next question, Niharika.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah. The next question, it is from Harshavardhan. Can you please elaborate about FSC certification? Will it be as used as USP to sell the products in coming days?
Okay, that's a favorite topic. It's going to take a long time, so I'll try and keep it simple. What it does is it gives you a chain of custody, right? Let's say you bought a packet of tea, right? It's a cardboard-based packet, tea or biscuit or something. Okay, let's take Tetra Pak for it. Simplest answer. I don't know how many of you have seen the side panel of a Tetra Pak. The top is actually folded and pasted. The side panel, you will see a triangular one or rectangular piece where you will find this check tree logo with the letters FSC written under it, mix, and with the below that there is a certificate number. So if you go into the FSC website, type the certificate number, it will show Tetra Pak as the converter. You can ask Tetra Pak for what is the code number of that lot. From the code number, they will say this was the supplier of the paperboard. From the supplier of the paperboard, which will probably be us, If you ask us, we can tell you when was this board manufactured. And from that date, we can also give you the GPS coordinates of the farm plot. So this entire chain of custody, we can explain from farm plot to the finished package, and which is what the first tenet of the Forest Stewardship Council is all about. This farm plot again has to be either certified to something called an FSC FM, which is forest management, or FSC control wood, which are based on the 10 principles. And there are 56 explanations to those principles. Okay, based on which the pulpwood tree itself is grown. Okay, and it is annually audited and certified by a third-party audit, which is when you start getting your FSC certificate, and you have to maintain pulpwood from certified forest or from a control wood forest to actually give this creditable finished goods. Okay, it's a slightly complex mechanism, but then the minute you see FSC, which means that product has not hurt the environment in any way through its entire manufacture. Yes, it does become a USP for selling a product because consumers, especially in India, more so than even in the European Union or the westernized countries, consumers have started asking what is the environmental impact or the carbon footprint of the package that they're holding in their hand, and how are we going to communicate it to them. So if it's a paper-based product, the best way to communicate is to get a FSC certified package for that product.
Yeah.
Next
This
question.
question is the most repeated question, sir. It is from Nidhi Sangavi. The energy consumption for paper recycling is a lot more than plastic recycling, like PET and etc. So how do we create a trade-off between the two?
Good question. I'm glad that you asked it. I don't know if you've been taught about a concept called life cycle analysis, right? So what LCA does is it takes the entire life cycle of a product, right? You'll have to define the scope. Usually for packaging material, it is better to define the scope as at least cradle to grave, right? The lowest scope that you can define is cradle to gate, which means I make a packaging material. Let's say I make a multi-layer laminate, and I can look at the entire process, arrive at the environmental impact, equate it to equivalent of carbon dioxide emissions, and arrive at a number and report it, right? I can say only up to my factory gate. That is cradle to gate. I can take it from a factory gate and beyond. It gets converted into a pouch. It gets filled with a product. The product is used. The pouch is thrown out. It gets collected and recycled. You measure the environmental impacts fully, and that is cradle to grave. The same pouch gets recycled and comes back as a granule to be used as a portion of recycled material in its original form, back as a granule to be converted again. That becomes cradle to cradle, right? So you define the scope of your life cycle analysis, look at the impact, which is the number of equivalents of carbon dioxide which has been emitted, and then do a comparison between paper, PET, any kind of other plastic or metal or glass, and that's how you do the comparison. Easy solution is not available because the base data for India today, the critical base data is how much of energy is used to say consume a liter of water, how much of energy is used to say burn fuel, how much is used for transportation. The base data, or what we call as the inventory analysis, is just about getting ready. Confederation of Indian Industry is doing it. So once it is ready, you'll be able to see what is the emission from that. Let me give you a quick example of what this inventory analysis is all about. Let us say you are consuming X amount of power to convert a plastic from oil to a granule. This power in India comes from the grid, and in India the grid power is fed by burning coal. You take coal, you burn it, convert it into steam, run a thermal power plant, convert it into energy, and that's where the grid comes from. Grid power comes from. Whereas if you take a country like Sweden, almost half their power comes from renewable sources. So the same amount of fuel or energy might have been spent, but then the impact on the environment is hugely different, right? So we had to do an inventory analysis for India for drawing water from, say, a lake, or drawing water from a rainwater harvested pit, or drawing water from the ground, there is an energy implication, and that also has an environmental impact. So you do the inventory analysis, map your entire production cycle, look at the impacts, do the emission factor, and arrive at a CO2 equivalent. And those two numbers for the same scope can then be compared. It's a huge industry. It's a completely separate field. I would suggest that's quite a growing field now. So most of you who are now graduating, start looking at, getting some certifications in doing an energy audit or doing a LCA audit itself, right? Start educating yourself on what the LCA is, because these professionals are going to be in demand in the near future. Yeah, next.
Yeah, okay, sir. The next, Antim wants to know if there are any guidelines for using the recycled material in food packaging, especially if it is in direct contact with the food.
If you look at the Food Standards and Safety Authorities of India Packaging and Labeling Regulations Act, it clearly says that if it is going to be in contact, then recycled content cannot be used. The first implication of the law was they are trying to ban the use of newspaper for eating street food. You and I, when we walk on the streets, you buy a vada pav, or you buy a bhaji, or you buy a pakoda. Usually the guy puts it onto a newspaper and gives it to you. The black ink has got lead in it, and that lead can get transferred, and it also has some mineral oil migration which can take place, and therefore usually recycled packaging or recycled content in packaging, if it can leach. So there are tests done. If there is a leachate, if it can leach either as a liquid or as a gas, and if it can react with the food item or with the product, it is better it should not be used, right? Look it up. Mineral oil migration, if you Google, you will find some interesting experiments which were done in Germany and also in the European Union, which will tell you how mineral oil migration impacts packaging material and therefore design of packaging material. So usually for direct contact with any food item, virgin material is the one which is to be used. I would say not only food item and also for pharmaceutical applications, virgin is the best item to be used.
Yeah. Okay, sir. The next question, it is from Kavya. Most of the compostable materials require industrial composting conditions. So unless and until they are disposed of properly, they often end up causing issues in recycling. So is it really a sustainable option for circular economy?
Very good question, Kavya. I really like this question. Excellent. Let's look at what does composting mean. I showed you in my slide that composting means that at the end of the process, it will emit carbon dioxide, water, and humus, or a compost material which is similar to soil, right? Now, not all materials do this, and not all materials do this at the same period of time. They say that, whatever plastic was invented 100 years ago, thrown into the landfill is still staying there, right? So there are two types of composting which can be done. Okay, one is called an industrial compost, and another is called a regular home compost or a garden compost. If you just Google OK compost, that's an entire subject which you can study. Now, what is an industrial composting? Industrial composting says that you will have to maintain a particular temperature in the composting pit. Usually they say it should be above 63 degrees centigrade. What happens above 63 degrees centigrade? It activates certain bacteria which will start eating this packaging material, and these microorganisms will convert it into humus and carbon dioxide and water. This temperature is required for the entire composting process to begin and for it to get completed over a period of time. Now, which means you will have to create a pit where you can change the temperature, and also the presence or absence of oxygen also plays a role. So there is something called an aerobic composting or an anaerobic composting. I told you about a material which is polylactic acid coated paperboard, PLA. Now, PLA, when it is disposed, needs an industrial composting atmosphere, which means it needs a minimum temperature for it to begin the composting process. I also spoke to you about a product called PBS. Now, PBS can actually start composting in a normal compost, which means you take a pit, you put some soil, there is a way in which a composting pit has to be built. You put some earthworms, you put some microorganisms, you put some bacteria into it, or there is a compost chemical which can be put into it. and PBS will start biodegrading immediately. I also showed you something about water-based emulsion coatings. Water-based emulsion coatings also lend themselves to composting. But before you look at the composting for any packaging material, I would like you to focus on the waste hierarchy, which I showed you in one of the slides. Waste hierarchy, when you compose the material, very good primary material is also getting consumed by the microorganism. So if you could actually separate the two, you could have taken it for recycling and not for complete degradation. So degradation is a good option for waste management, but try and see if you can first recycle or reuse. If that is not possible, then see if there is an industrial composting available. You will be surprised. Most of the big cities in India, the municipal corporations have industrial composting facilities across the city. So they know that if a material can get composted, it is segregated and taken into a composting facility. The problem, as I told you, begins with you and me, because we've mixed other waste with it. The municipal waste operator also is not able to segregate it. If we had put this composting material in a separate bin, then it can go with wet waste, it can go into industrial composting facilities and get composted. So if you look at the top 3 coffee houses across the country today, and where you pay somewhere around 150 to 200 rupees for a cup of coffee, those are all Omega Bev or PLA based applications, where when the cup is thrown there itself, it is segregated and collected and sent to a industrial compost for composting. Alternative materials are available, which you can do even home compost or a garden compost also. The packaging material will get completely biodegraded. Yeah, next question, Niharika.
It is from Abhishek Surya, sir. What is the significance of using MLPs in manufacturing of commodity goods, like for example, tiles and all? Will it solve the MLP problem somehow?
I'm not clear. Is he saying is MLP waste being used in manufacturing tiles, or is it what is the point in using an MLP for packaging commodity goods?
Yeah, for suppose if we use MLPs in any manufacturing of products, so will it solve the MLP problem, sir?
Oh, absolutely. If at all, the multi-layer plastic waste which is collected, if you can use it in making some product, that's the best application for it. Even if you look at the hierarchy, there is something called, all of us have heard of recycling. There is also something called upcycling, where the product, when it goes into a raw material, being a raw material for some other product, it actually increases in value, then it becomes upcycling. Classic example would be, in fly ash, wherever there is coal or any other fuel which is burnt, the residual ash is called fly ash, which used to be, only put into landfills in the past. Today, people make hollow bricks out of it, and these hollow bricks have a higher strength than a typical clay-fired or a red clean brick. And so these hollow bricks are now abundantly used in construction, and fly ash is also used as one of the raw materials for cement manufacture itself. So that is one application of an upcycling application. Definitely, if MLP can be used in the manufacture of some product, it's one of the best uses of application that you can find.
Yeah. Okay, sir. The next question, it is from Vikas Dhiman. Which model is best for recycling?
Which model is best for recycling? I don't understand.
Like which technique is best for recycling, sir?
See, it depends on the construction of the packaging material, right? Each type of packaging material has its own different method of recycling, right? The critical thing is that it should not be contaminated with any other waste. So if it is segregated and collected, whether is it rigid plastics or flexible plastic or glass or metal or paper paperboard, the technique or method of recycling would differ based on the type of structure that is there in the packaging material. So I cannot say which one is the best, but each one has its own applications.
Yeah. Amit Kumar wants to know the challenges you have faced or still facing to implement EPR, sir?
The challenges. Okay, now EPR so far in India, like I showed you those two tables of the European Union example, there is no cost or fee which is being levied on the brand user. Because there is no legislation or a cost or fee is not being levied, people are still designing packaging which is not very environmentally friendly. Let me give you an example. I was surprised in one of our own packaging fraternities discussion groups. Somebody was asking for a soap carton. Somebody wanted to design a polypropylene carton, which is like, anathema for us. And no packaging engineer should even look at it. The standard argument that is being given is no, marketing is asking for it. The brand manager is asking for it. Okay. The brand manager is not saying polypropylene carton for the package. The brand manager is saying visibility for the package for the product inside. So there are multiple ways of doing it. But the minute you design a polypropylene based carton, it's so small, the waste collector is not going to pick it up. It's going to lie around for decades or for even hundreds of years, right? So the minute you look at your own packaging and what is the material that you're going to use, the biggest obstacle to cross is our own packaging technologist or our own packaging designer. If all of us can understand that, look, what I'm designing, is it friendly for the environment? I think that's the first big step towards, becoming easy for implementation of EPR. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. Thank you for answering all the questions with patience, sir. As the time constraints, we would like to mail you the remaining unanswered questions with your permission.
Please do so. They have my mail, Akshay and Ajay. They have my mail. Sorry, Ayush and Ajay. Let me get his name straight. I've been getting his name from day one. Sorry about that. Please mail it to him, and I'll be able to answer those questions. Give me some time because I may not have all the immediate answers. Things which I do not know, I will check with experts within ITC, and then I'll give you the answer for that. Right?
Yeah, thank you, Niharika. Sridhar sir, as a representative of alumni, and students, we have a certain 2 to 3 questions for you. First of all, is about ITC's eChopal initiative, which is sort of a case study across all B schools of the world, including Harvard Business Review, Harvard HBS, and even IIMs. So, is it something to do with the circular economy? Because there are a lot of farmers or agricultural productivity into the place. Would you like to give your comments and suggestions on that? How do you take that?
I do not know if that would come under the classic definition of circular economy. What the eChopal has done is it has created a digital backbone, right? By creating a digital backbone, it created awareness on best farm practices. It also started creating a market for what is the right price for the farmer's produce, right? So it gave the farmer the visibility in his hand, right? Although it was a website file, now today they can even access it on their mobile phones. And it gave them end-to-end visibility that if they produce a particular crop, what is the kind of weather they can expect in the next 6 months? Based on the soil type, what kind of their productivity can they expect? And what has been the price trend for their crop, right? So it gave them a full-fledged digital backbone. What we did was we took it one step further. So the minute we knew that a particular farmer has got a particular harvest and there is so much of sale proceeds which is there in his hand, we use the same backbone to do some marketing of services and products to him. So from shirts to motorcycles, the brand knows which set of farmers or which geographical area in the country to target to go and sell these back to them also. So that way I would say it has acted in a circular manner and probably can be broadly brought under a circular economy, but not from a circular economy from a packaging technologist point of view, because this was more for the basic farmer produce.
Okay, nice. It's a very comprehensive answer and it answers my question. Now, I would like to move to a separately different topic. I would like to take your like 5 to 6 minutes. So, you represent like you are looking after like heading packaging, marketing packaging, or sort of like for ITC PSPD. So, what sort of like certain sort of skills or enhancements are required on the part of like PGDP students? What you have seen like packaging development professionals over the years. What certain sort of skills are required working in a packaging marketing function?
Okay, boss, the number one skill I would say
Hmm.
is definitely, see, when we go to sell, the converter. For me, the customer is the printer converter. People are going to take my board and print something on it and convert it. So
Right.
people are looking for technical expertise. So the number one is whatever field you're going to choose to become a sales or a marketing guy,
Hmm.
understand your product thoroughly. The way
Okay.
it is manufactured, what are the constraints, what is its environmental impact, what are its applications, and the way in which it is used, right? So become a technical expert thoroughly. That is number one. Second, look at it from the customer's point of view. If you're going to get into sales, how can you start looking at every aspect of the entire process from the customer point of view? There are some lot of books available. It will be good to educate yourself on B2B sales and also on B2B marketing. The minute I say sales and marketing, everybody looks at business to consumer marketing, which is where all the MBAs and IIMs and all the management technical institutes should be there. But ours is going to be predominantly business to business marketing. So if you're a packaging technologist, you already have the knowledge, the technical expertise that is required. It's good to go through a basic book. It's good to go through some things. And the first thing that you'll have to become strong on is in communication. What is it that the listener wants to know? What is of value to him? How can I convert my product or service of value to him? And how can I sell it to him? So that's the critical thing that I would ask anybody who's interested in sales and marketing to learn first. Communication skills and very good expertise in technical knowledge. When you now
Nice.
enter the field, you're going to be a jack of all trades. But after 2-3 years, you will become for example, today, I wouldn't know much about, other types of packaging as much as I know about paperboard packaging, right? So I would suggest that get that technical expertise and then keep educating yourself on communication skills.
Right. So makes
Sorry,
sense.
one
Like
more
a
important
technical.
aspect. Sorry,
Yeah.
one
Please.
more important aspect. I find
Yeah.
predominant across the board, I find many of our alumni, they're not that strong on commercial aspects. So you must understand every aspect of your invoice. What is GST? What is the benefit that it gives? What is input tax credit? How is the raw material affected on input tax credit? Understanding those parlances. What is cost of credit? What is the cost of inventory holding? You need to know all the commercial aspects also to be able to price your product or service suitably. So please learn the commercial side of it.
Means makes sense. It means like apart from like packaging technology, the students have to, and even like people like us have to focus on the economics of the packaging. Which when you're talking about the input credits, what the packaging is going to give. Yeah, and also the technical expertise combined with like excellent and exceptional communication skills are the need of the very well said, sir. My next question to you is you are from third batch. Obviously, you have like 3+ decades in the industry. Many students have approached us in recent past. So these students will be looking for placements in July. So they are asking one typical standard question. So should they ask? They are currently interning in the industries for like pursuing their 5 to 6 months internship period. So they are asking us like, should they ask for extension of the internships in the industries to the respective HRs, or should they go with their campus placement? So would you like to give some recommendations? Like you are sitting inside the industry and you represent one of the largest conglomerate of India, so ITC. So would you like to like give some recommendations on those fronts?
See, it's like this. If you have done very well on your internship, if you've done well on the project and they see that you are a good team player, then the company in which you're currently interning itself will give you a pre-placement offer, right? It's good to kind of check with your immediate manager or your guide on what are the employment prospects in the existing company itself. First, ensure that, are they looking at, do they have a vacancy? Are they looking to fill that vacancy? And is there a chance for you to get a PPO, right? So that's the first thing that you'll have to find out. And supposing they say, there is a vacancy, but we don't think you are qualified or something like that, it's good to have a very open chat with the manager with whom you've been working, or with a couple of colleagues with whom you've been doing the internship, and ask them to spend 5 or 10 minutes asking for areas of improvement. What are they looking for in the candidate, which you will have to then develop as a skill so that you make yourself more employable. And today, believe it or not, I am also going through a course today with the Confederation of Indian Industry. I have undertaken a course during the lockdown where I have spent 3-hour classes daily for 15 days and taking a quiz. I'm going to write an exam on the 31st of May, right? Qualifying myself on certified expert on environment sustainability. There are many courses, either on Coursera or EDX. There are a lot of courses. So if they say that, look, I think you're lacking in a particular skill, you are not a team player, or your time management skill is not good, or your project you have written, but then there are some gaps, your logical application is not good, look for these courses and qualify yourself, right? They're not very expensive, they're mostly free. You have to pay something in a few dollars only if you want to get a certificate. I would say it's worth the investment. Do that, right? Only after your existing firm has said, no, I don't think we are going to give you a PPO, then go back to the placement cell and say, yes, I am now open for taking up a job. I can quote to you only from my own example. When I came out of IAP, I had almost 2 offers. One was in Pune, one was in some other place. And I basically hailed from Chennai. I did the stupid thing of saying, no, I want a job only in Chennai, and then I went back, right? So almost we were a batch of around, I think, 11 people or 15 people. And most of them got placed immediately, but because I kept asking for Chennai, there was no placement. Chennai, there was no jobs available at that time. So do not be location specific when they ask you. Take the job. Wherever they are giving it to you, take the job. Get a job, get your teeth in, because every company knows that the first year they are spending money in educating you and making you a professional. Year 2, it's break even. Year 3 onwards only you start contributing value to the company where you're working. So I would request all of you to, if at all they're offering you, wherever across India or wherever in the world, take up the job, go there, learn for the next 2 years. After that, see whether you are built for that particular role or profile. Otherwise, you can always start applying again.
Yeah, yes, sir. So
Yeah,
the central message to the students is that they have to qualify themselves, and metrics on which they have to qualify, they have to decide themselves. So obviously they have to take initiatives to talk to their managers, hiring managers, and build on a comprehensive profile and understand how to go about that. Makes sense. My last question to you for today's session is, obviously we are going through the very tough time of the entire world is going through this COVID-19 impact. How do you see its impact on the economy and also on the job crisis which is currently going on? We are currently reading on LinkedIn and all job portals 90% of the job offers have been rescinded, cancelled across all these schools, premium job offers. So is that going to impact the technology formulation, R&D, packaging, or how it is and how long that impact is going to continue? Any comments, sir, on that part?
Okay, that's quite a few questions. Let me try and give you my assessment of the situation, right? If you ask, pre-COVID, the first few months, let us take the year 1920. April, May, June was kind of slow. July, August, September was also slow, but then slowly the economy started picking up, right? Before the COVID hit us, the economy actually started picking up. We were looking at a GDP of somewhere around 6%, right? But now they are saying the GDP could be somewhere in the range of 2%. And probably India is the only country or one of the few countries in the world which is going to show a positive growth in GDP. Many of the others are going to be into the negative growth of GDP. So as far as the economic impact is concerned, people say it's going to be like a V curve. The curve is going to be like the letter V. Automobiles, restaurants, travel, all this is going to take a very long time to recover. Essential items, which is going to be food, which means food-based packaging for food, food service packaging, pharmaceuticals, And then the other day-to-day essentials like toothpaste, FMCG goods like soap and oil, all these things, there is already a pent-up demand. They say the minute the lockdown gets lifted, again it's going to shoot up, right? So I would say predominantly consumer goods with packaging, or even some of the feeding goods, B2B goods with packaging. The economy is going to bounce back somewhere between 3 to 6 months. It's going to be back on its foot, and we don't see why the growth should not come back. Okay, so they're saying across a period of 12 months, by the end of 12 months, if the vaccine is ready, definitely there's going to be a further boom. Okay, so that's what they're looking at. Usually, I don't know about B school candidates, but packaging at some multiple levels, from a small company to a big company, if they are foreseeing some kind of growth, they are definitely going to look at launching different types of products and new kinds of products and innovations. Another change which is now happening is the change in the SKUs. People are no longer looking at small packs, 100 ml, 50 gram, 100 gram, 25 gram packs. They are not looking at it because somewhere psychologically all of us have gone to the store during the lockdown and seen empty shelves. So today, if you are buying the bulk pack, right? You are buying a large packet of noodles, or you end up buying a 2 kg pack or a 4 kg pack. So most of the packaging guys are frenetically working on redesigning the packaging for larger SKUs. So the entire chain, the inventory and the holding is changing. So there is going to be work for packaging technologists, right? Across R&D, across purchase functions, probably across sales and marketing functions also. I am quite an optimistic guy, so I do not want to paint a bleak picture. I don't think it's that bleak, In fact, we would need people, but right now, everybody's trying to first assess what is their cash position, right? Capital is going to be king for the next 3 to 6 months. Companies are going to look at huge cost cutting, and there could be some amount of postponement in recruitments. So that's why I'm telling these guys that if you do get a job somewhere, take it, even if it's with a converter or a laminator or whatever it is. Take the job, learn the ropes of the industry, and then you can start looking at the next jump once the COVID problem actually is removed. And especially it's going to happen the minute a vaccine is coming up. As far as India is concerned, 3 to 6 months is the time that we are looking at.
Right, sir. So the message within 3 to 6 months, students and even packaging professionals like us have to evaluate or take decision on multiple parameters. So let us see, let us hope for the best. Soon we have a vaccine in place and economy rebounds back. Yeah. So I think we are towards the end of the session. It's a long 1 hour 30 minutes, and with the I would like to appreciate the energy which due to which you have carried this session so far, and I would like to move towards formal vote of thanks. Again, on behalf of our leaders like Swati, Hari, and Jay, 2,500 PGDP alumni, 180 students, and Ayush and Ajay, I would like to thank you. You gave your precious time during the working day, and